Qasar Applied Intuition recently raised $250 million Series Z at a $6 billion valuation. That's impressive, but what's even more impressive, Wall Street luminaries Mary Meeker, Henry Kravis, and Ray Diallo joined the round. Why? What do they see, and is an IPO on the horizon?
Thanks for having us on again. It's always good to chat with you. No, we're not immediately thinking about an IPO. This is not an IPO roadshow or anything like that. I think the company is more mature, and there is a difference between getting early stage, well-known investors like Mark Andreessen from Andreessen Horowitz, or Hemant from General Catalyst, or Bilal from Lux, and that they're actually very different. They look at different things as investors. They look at potential, and they look at some more early stage kind of markers. Folks like Mary Meeker or Ray Dalio, they're really looking at more mature businesses, and they do think more like public investors. Mary and Bond, I mean, that's kind of their bread and butter. So I think for us, it's some version of validation that you can get folks who really understand the stage and are willing to put real capital to work. Also, we brought in a number of other kind of strategic folks like Mustafa Suleiman, who is a co-founder of DeepMind, as we invest more into AI more significantly. For the listeners who don't know me, I previously used to be at Y Combinator. I was a COO. Sam Altman was the president. It was during my time when YC Research started, and of course, out of that, OpenAI. And so we're not, and obviously we as a company, Applied Intuition is an AI first company. But I think as we're going through these fundamental shifts in some architectures and in technologies and approaches, we also thought, hey, let's bring on some folks who are like subject matter experts. So they were also part of the round.
And also, of course, Porsche who was a partner of ours, was also a significant investor in the Series Z as well.
They're the kind of first OEM partner we've ever had invest, and it shows just the depth of that relationship. And we're super proud. We were just talking before, Porsche is not like many other OEMs. I mean, it's a true engineering company in the truest sense. It's something I think we're very similarly.
Sort of the embodiment of passion in automotive.
Yeah. And we're like the embodiment of passion and software in automotive. Which somehow is cool as a 911 or a Taycan or a Cayenne, but we like it.
So here's the thing. Porsche trades on the Euronext. Their ticker's P911. So if you go on the NYSE or NASDAQ, can you get the AI ticker? Then you can keep it going together?
You heard it here first.
Exactly. Peter, from a technical standpoint, how are you using AI to enhance your products? Are you looking into generative AI? What does that AI roadmap look like for Applied Intuition?
As Qasar mentioned, we've been an AI first company really since we started in 2017. What's changed though over the last year is there's a set of new approaches that are very promising that effectively allow even better performance across a number of different tasks. And we're taking full advantage of these new techniques across everything that we do, every product. Really looking at it and thinking, well, how can we use these new techniques to provide more value to customers, to supercharge the workflows, to allow our customers to build fundamentally what they're trying to take to market better and faster and more safely. This is everything from mundane stuff like we are launching a phenomenal documentation tool that uses a chatbot. And there's nothing revolutionary about that, but it's actually very impactful for using some of our products, all the way to much more, let's say, cutting edge and advanced technology related to understanding data that's being collected by autonomous vehicles and ingested in our tool chain.
Is a key theme of how your customers are going to use the AI around efficiency? They want to increase efficiency?
Efficiency is one. I would say safety is another angle. And then also just the capabilities of the system that can be developed is the third. Because using some of these newer AI techniques, it sort of unlocks a new set of functionality, which maybe in the past would have been too difficult to develop using the prior set of techniques.
Yeah, I think our role in the ecosystem, we're a vendor and a supplier and a B2B company. We don't take products to market to consumers. And so we always want to play that role where our customers see us as that trusted partner to unlock the newest technologies that exist. And us being a Silicon Valley company as well, we can do that. And that partnership ends up working quite well, right? The OEM is really an expert at manufacturing and taking products to market and consumer experiences. And we can be an expert in the tooling to actually get there and to create those great experiences.
And to give an example, something that we're getting extremely deep in is what we're calling EV 2.0, which is this shift of development of autonomy systems moving from traditional algorithms to being based on data and machine learning, and ensuring that all of the development tools, everything that we've been doing as a company can fully support all of these new approaches and bringing those systems to production.
I recently had Alex Kendall, the CEO, co-founder of Wave, on the podcast, and he told this great story. Mr. Bill Gates went to visit him. Their approach, that AV 2.0 approach. This is to both of you. Do you feel that AV 2.0 approach is the future of autonomous driving for the next 5 years, perhaps 10 years?
I have a Bill Gates story as well, but I'll save it until after Peter answers the question.
Yes, so I think in general, right, maybe let's talk technicals for a second, and then I'll answer the specific question. So the field of machine learning is all about function estimation, right? Fundamentally, what you're trying to do is you're trying to, instead of using, let's say, traditional math and handwritten code to create a function, you're trying to effectively fit a model to produce the correct answer that you want. And then the question is, well, how big can that function be? The earliest applications of machine learning were very small functions, solving very, very small, distinct problems. And the trend in ML has been, well, we can keep making this function estimator larger and larger and larger to estimate more and more complicated functions. That's enabled through not only a number of breakthroughs on the research and the science component, but it's also enabled through breakthroughs in chip technology and the fact that you can fit so many transistors on modern processors. And so the question of, well, how big of a function can you estimate? I think the answer is going to be, well, it's probably going to keep growing. Every year, we're probably going to be able to estimate larger and larger functions. And then the question is, well, what does it take to productionize these large function estimations? And that's really where our expertise is incredibly deep, which is making these systems safe and then really enabling lots of companies to be able to do this and bring these systems to production. And so I think there is an inevitability, just like Moore's law, there will be more transistors available on these processors that's going to keep getting larger and larger, especially with the trend towards chiplets and being able to now combine actually separately manufactured silicon together on a single package. The limit to how big these chips can be is just going to keep getting larger and larger and larger. And that's going to, again, unlock these larger function estimations. And we want to be right in the middle of all this activity.
My Bill Gates story is a couple of years ago, Eric Thornburg from Blitz Global set up this one-on-one with Bill, and Blitz Global's an investor and Bill Gates is an investor in Blitz Global. And so we talked about our company. He had already had notes, which I was impressed by. I mean, like, imagine you meet a little bit of a hero and then they already know like about your company and stuff. And afterward, we go into what the company's doing. And I said, oh, it's kind of like Windows and Intel. And we want to play this role of kind of being like a software supplier, trying to play that analogy. And I said, I think it's a good strategy. And he looked at me and he was like, yeah, I think it's a good strategy. It's like I'm basically telling him like, the Windows Intel strategy was a phenomenal strategy in the 80s. And he looked at me like I was stating something extremely obvious. But it was a great conversation. I mean, speaking of, incredible insights in a short amount of time. So really, really, really great. I think I haven't listened to the Alex podcast, but I think the story was more entertaining.
They went for a ride in the Wave vehicle around Soho in Midtown London, and then Mr. Gates wanted to go in the fish and chips, and Alex goes, security wouldn't let him go in for the fish and chip shop. They had to go in for him, and they had their fish and chips in the AV as they cruised around London. It's a really interesting, fascinating story. Peter, on the chip architecture, there's been a lot of public reports in the financial news media mostly around Amazon, Google, various companies wanting to build their own chip architectures to compete with NVIDIA, and Qualcomm has a very large automotive growing business. They view it, their biggest competitor now is Mobileye. How do you see the chip market evolving? Are we going to get these large tech companies will build their own chips, own silicon? Or where do you see that going?
There's going to be a lot more players, and NVIDIA certainly has a good head start on a number of things here, but we're in this market, in the chip market, we're customers, right? Of course, we're buying NVIDIA GPUs for various work. I think there is now a lot of talent that's working very hard on these problems and building new chip architectures. I think it's not going to be a monopoly for NVIDIA forever. There's going to be many competitive solutions. And we want to enable our customers to use whatever is best in market and provide them with all of the right tools and all the right infrastructure to get the best value out of whatever chips are available.
You're creating value for your customers. Qasar, you mentioned your Y Combinator background, you accelerated companies, but now you're there, you and Peter co-founded Applied. Do your customers view you as a trust layer for new and emerging technology, the best way to implement it into their workflows?
Yeah, 100%. That's been our role in our position, very consciously and actively. And that's not like a surprising role in the sense of there are many, that's what the tier one supplier ecosystem does. If you really want to learn about brakes and what's going on, a Brembo or a Bosch, some of these powerhouses and these technologies, they can teach you as an OEM those things. Well, now when you talk about AI, that's maybe not the area of expertise of a Brembo or a Conti or something like that. And I think that's where we play a role.
Additionally, since the beginning of the company, our role has always been to bring state-of-the-art Silicon Valley technology out to the global vehicles industry, really with this focus on enabling safe and intelligent machines. And so that's as true today as it was 7 years ago. I think the only thing that's changed maybe are some of the themes of that technology that we're bringing from Silicon Valley out to the rest of the industry.
Yeah. And Grayson, I think the other point is not only looking at a point in time, we started the company 7 years ago. The technology is changing. It's going to change in the next 7 years, and it's going to change in the 7 years after that. And so I think if you're headquartered in Italy or you're headquartered in Korea, you're not going to be near this kind of almost epicenter of this. Y Combinator is literally next door to us here, like where we're sitting, and so is it random that an OpenAI would start in the Bay Area? No, because this is where a lot of almost the core ingredients are there for these mutations of new technologies to emerge. And the mutation doesn't only mean a specific technical approach. It means the application of the approach in a way that a consumer or a customer would find valuable. If you take transformers as an example, that technology is researched and published at Google, but it's used at OpenAI. And then now there's a host of, let's say, a dozen other companies that are creating foundational models like OpenAI at fairly large scales. But it's all happening, generally speaking, in Silicon Valley, or heavily inspired by Silicon Valley. Even the companies like in Japan, you have like a Sakana, or in France, in Paris, you have Mistral. They are, they're heavily influenced by the ecosystem here, and vice versa. And so I think we can play that role of almost like translator, because there's also a lot of noise. We talk about the signal that's coming through. In the last 7 years, there's been a lot of noise, and then we can digest that and not kind of bring that to our customers. Peter's mentioned before, we always just want to be that first call of that technology partner. And I think we're slowly earning that right with more and more of the large players. Of the top 20 global automotive OEMs, 18 of them are using us in a real and significant way. And so that's a very deep set of relationships that we're super proud of course.
What new themes do you see emerging?
When we started the company, this debate about, let's say, the softwareization of the car or the impact of AI in the car was still quite, let's say, active and heated. There's no debate today. I mean, 100% of OEMs globally recognize that they have to be expert at software and at AI. So I think that's a fundamental shift. I think the excitement of L4 has I think we're at a local low point. I think you'll see it come back as Waymo and others continue to expand their geography and more consumers interact with autonomy. I've never talked to a consumer who sat in a Waymo ride and that has not deeply impressed them. Even people who are deeply cynical are like, wow, that's actually drives very much like a human being.
And at least anecdotally, the retention is extremely high.
Extremely high.
Yeah. So people don't just use Waymo once. If they start using it, they use it a lot.
If you're a listener to the podcast and you haven't been in a Waymo ride and you're in the industry, it's worth an airplane ticket to experience it because it's just so natural. I think that's the surprise.
All over San Francisco.
All of San Francisco. And so I think just talking about changes, I think there is the recognition of how hard L4 is. And I think that's no longer a debate. I think that was a debate maybe 3-4 years ago, 5 years ago, especially. And then the emergence of ADAS as a true category. I think ADAS is going to be a part of every single vehicle, not just premium vehicles in the future. You talk about the road to autonomy, there's two roads, right? There's the kind of the Waymo road, and then there's the Tesla road. Gross generalization, especially for a sophisticated audience. But you understand what it's like, the picture we're painting is, and we had applied, we've helped travelers on both roads, not to extend the analogy too much, but I think it's objectively why has applied been successful, where there's been a lot of, let's say, contraction in the market is because we haven't been extremely dogmatic. We haven't been extremely, I would say, negative. I think we're an optimistic company that wants to help our customers really succeed. And although those things of not being dogmatic and being optimistic and obviously being technically very proficient say that as kind of as an important footnote. I think it's allowed us to create a business which is a bit more durable than being, let's say, all in on a very specific technical technique. And then if that technology doesn't work out, that's bad for you and that's bad for your customer because now they're all in on that specific view.
It goes into being a diversified business. And that's really where this comes. Do you view autonomous driving as a growth business for Applied?
Absolutely. I think in the Venn diagram of vehicles and software, this is from when we started the company, that's the dominion that we play in. And within that software and vehicles, the overlap, autonomy and autonomous systems is going to continue to grow. One of the I think misnomers or mistakes that people make, especially if you're analyzing the ecosystem, let's just take mobile as an example, is a lot of times, at what point did mobile become really its own sector? If you're covering the space, and when does mobile become mobile? And it's like, is it in the 80s and 90s when there's satellite phones? No, not really. Is it in the 2000s when the Motorola flip phones are kind of dominant? Maybe the Qualcomm brick phones. Is it when the iPhone gets announced? Maybe. Or is it when the app stores get announced? Maybe. The point of making it, it's a gradient. Actually, it's really hard to pick like the step function change. We know important things that happen as we look back, but even those are not step function change. I think autonomy is going to the same way. I think we're going to be 2035. There's going to be autonomy everywhere. And then we're going to look back and we're going to forget, let's say, the naysayers of, well, Waymo is never going to be successful, or the naysayers just say Tesla's never be successful. Whoever the target of the day or the target of the month or the quarter is, Cruise has gotten some heat in the last quarter or so. But when you stretch out, 2040, look back, 2035, look back, you'll just see autonomy's been growing the whole time. And that's a way that we also see our place in the market. The market is growing. It's just slow and steady, so it's not as exciting. The human brain can't watch paid drive for too long before it decides to like look at something up. But we're in the paid drive business. So we see the small flakes, go from moist to dry. So that's the business we're in. I love the business. I'm as bullish in autonomy as I've ever been. I mean, I think it's really an exciting space. It's just maybe not so exciting as it was for the first time you heard about it in 2012.
Yeah, and I also want to emphasize the products that we've developed here in our complex in Mountain View have had a huge impact on the technology development since we started 7 years ago. And of course, I can't disclose any confidential information for our customers, but our customers are doing absolutely incredible things with the products that we've built here.
Those are making it to production. These are not just R&D projects that you'll never see the light of day. They're production projects.
Your customers, I know a lot of them privately speak very highly of you. I won't name names here, but they speak very highly of you privately, and that says a lot to what you're doing. Qasar, your point about paint drying, Benjamin Moore is a good business. It's a successful business. It's owned by Berkshire Hathaway.
Berkshire is a great business.
It's doing very well. Yes. They're on the way to $1 trillion market cap. I got to get back to cell phones because I have an opinion on that. So we start with the StarTAC, it's the Motorola line. Then we went to the Razrs. Yeah. The Nokia had the N90, which was very popular. And before that, you had the Nokia Navigator. Then T-Mobile had the T-Mobile Sidekick. And then when AT&T first had the iPhone, when Jobs got the $99 plan, it ran on the Edge network. It was horrible. Didn't work well. That's when BlackBerry, aka the Crackberry. To me, the big moment was when LTE went to the iPhone.
Grayson, did you run a podcast before called The Road to Mobile? I don't know. Google search.
Is this the option?
Yeah, is this it's just like Dune 2,
I got a lot of random knowledge in my head, and I like gadgets. But to me, it was the LTE moment because you were finally able to stream content to the device. That was that big breakthrough moment. It wasn't the app store, it was the ability to the plumbing to get to there. And for the autonomous vehicle, to me, the big breakthrough moment is going to be very similar. It's going to be the plumbing that's going to enable in-vehicle experiences. Once we can enable the in-vehicle experiences and turn on that commerce layer, then autonomy just goes off for the races. Then your 2035 autonomy everywhere becomes correct. We're going to have autonomy on farms. We're going to have autonomy in warehouses. We're going to have it with long-haul trucks. The one change, and Peter, this is coming to you, sir, that's going to happen. The tech stack is going to change as the autonomy evolves, becomes smarter, becomes more energy efficient. How do you see the tech stack for autonomy changing as we go towards 2035?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the way that we view this is we always want to be investing in, let's say, multiple bets and the different approaches that each have some success probability, but there's a very high confidence that among these approaches, you'll get to a great solution at some point. I think the obvious trends right now are recently Tesla rolled out FSD 12.3. And this was, as far as I know, I think this was actually a general rollout to their fleets. And the tagline there was they've removed, or at least they claim they've removed the last of hand-coded algorithms from their full self-driving ADAS stack. Actually saying full self-driving ADAS in one sentence seems to be contradictory, but that is what it is. And so there is a trend towards the tech stack moving away from hand coding towards more of these model fits with collected data. I think that will continue, but I think that the responsible thing for Applied, and also the responsible thing for many of our customers, is to think about the diversified strategy, because you don't necessarily know what's going to eventually end up working. And we have the resources to be diversified. And that's been a strength of our company and our strategy.
Yeah. And it's one of the, some folks ask us, we're a cash flow positive company. Why raise money? It is to continue to diversify. And it's not only it's literally for our customers. I think it's our responsibility to make sure our customers are never in a position that a new technology surprises them or creates an environment where they're not at the pole position. Not to use the Porsche example too much, winningest car manufacturer in Le Mans. So I'm starting to use more and more of these racing analogies every day. But yeah, that's kind of our role.
Yeah, and then just explicitly answering the question on tech stacks, I think the right approach is to have a multi-tech stack strategy.
Yeah.
And just recognizing that there's going to be evolutions in the tech stack, and you have to think about that from the beginning, and how is that going to impact the way that you build these systems.
Peter, do you have a team that just research all day, trying to stay ahead of new technologies, experimenting with new technologies, beta testing technologies that can eventually possibly be implemented into your tech stack that then could be delivered to your customers?
We have a lot of PhDs at Applied. That's maybe even an understatement. We have folks who are working very hard on this stuff. I can't say on the podcast everything we've got going on, but yeah, we have a lot of folks working very hard.
Yeah, I think the stats would be surprising to even people in the Bay Area. I mean, we're a hugely engineering company. And so I think another reason the customers depend on us is that because we have some, magical sales motion or team or something like that. I mean, not to disrespect our sales team at all. It's just such a small organization. It really is. We're a product company. And the way you build good products is you really are on the cutting edge of what's going on. Sometimes that's by understanding what's on the ecosystem, and sometimes that's creating it in-house.
Is that what attracted Porsche? Because Porsche as an engineering culture makes some of the world's greatest vehicles. Is that what brought Applied Intuition and Porsche together?
I would say that's near the top of the list. I think culturally we're very similar in that sense. I mean, just the ethos of the company's long-term thinking, long horizons, a focus on being the best in our respective domains. I think all those things kind of played. And I think Porsche understands, as do many OEMs, that software is really important. It's even for a product as, let's say, as visceral and mechanical as the 911, software is important. It's just important. I think we're past the era where consumers are okay with subpar software experiences as long as the mechanical experience is really great. So I think we mutually see that, and I think the partnership is going to focus on that.
Porsche has done a lot of really positive things, and they've leaned into the future. I remember with the Cayenne, all the purists went ballistic. How dare they make a Cayenne? I owned a turbo diesel Cayenne, and I could tell you, I got to think up to 110 on a turn, and it cornered really well. So it was a well done manufactured Porsche, and the Porsche purists are going to choke me on this one, but I have to ask. So they had the Porsche Taycan. A 911 all-electric Porsche is coming at some point. When and if, I'll use the word if, will that running the applied software in it? Will you run the simulation, or is that part of your joint software development?
We just can't comment on
that. It's a you can imagine, like, we're like in a back alley of a boring part of software, the software universe. Porsche is like on Main Street with like primary real estate. So we're very careful what we say, because it is a consumer brand and tens of thousands of jobs and lots of projects on the line. So I think we have to be very, very careful what we can and can't say about them. But we're excited to partner with them. Is all I'll say, Grayson.
All right. When a 911 electric comes out, I'll buy one, take one for a spin, and then we'll see how it performs. How's that?
You can invite us back on the podcast whenever there's a notable thing, and we're happy to talk about it. I think it's really interesting to see the evolution of a company which is so deeply in the automotive kind of lore. I mean, I think it's not controversial to say that the 911 is probably the best car ever made. I mean, it's a car that's been going for 75 years, 60 years. I think it maybe just passed 60. I think is where maybe recently passed. And there's this Ford Mustang is up there. There's a couple of the Chevy Corvette. There's not many cars that get to that level of like generational, impact. And so we're super, super happy to work with them, as we are with many of our other OEM customers.
Jerry Seinfeld would agree with you on the 9/11 comment.
Yeah. I think as both of us are, Porsche fans are their own weird subgroup of people. So we could probably dedicate a podcast to that.
We totally could. Not necessarily related to Porsche, but will joint development software development with OEMs continue? Will that be a trend that we'll see in the coming months of years that Applied will look to achieve or accomplish?
I think the working model that we've brought to the industry, where the tools are really important and building the internal capabilities of the customer are really important, I think we'll continue to see that more and more. I think there's no way that an industry can go through these changes of electrification and autonomy without the companies and the business models themselves being impacted to some degree. I think that's definitely going to happen. Now, the level of impact, like, are we all going to go to Elon Musk's version of Tesla robotaxis? Maybe that's too far. But is it going to be exactly the way it's been in the last 100 years? That's probably too far as well. And so I think the way that OEMs partner with companies like us is also changing. And I think Porsche and us we're showing a different way of partnering. It was a much more intimate relationship and working together much more collaboratively. All the partners that work with us right now, they know how close we work with them. And so I think that's just our way of being. I think that's going to be more and more of the industry. I just can't imagine. These systems are so integrated. They're so tightly coupled.
Peter, I agree with that. Peter, how are traditional OEMs leveraging your tools I'm going to use a very basic term. You mentioned Bill Gates. So I'll give you a Microsoft term. Is it an Office 365 suite, or what does it look like from a traditional OEM perspective?
Yeah, that analogy works. Definitely. It's a bit of a stretch, but it works. We have brought modern engineering development tools, software development tools to automakers globally. And when I say modern, this really encapsulates everything that a Silicon Valley engineer working at Google or Apple would consider as a part of their development workflow. And we're bringing that to the entire vehicles industry, and they're leveraging those tools extremely effectively. But yes, in the same way that Office 365, let's say, is a powerful set of tools that enables everyone to do work more efficiently and then share that work with others in the organization. Our tools and products, they're enabling automotive engineers to do their work more efficiently and collaborate with their global teams.
Yeah, I think that maybe even the more on the nose would be, it is like an IDE. It's like an integrated development environment for the automotive industry. And that's both in autonomy and also outside of autonomy. I mean, the product launch we recently had, the vehicle platform, that is going outside of autonomy. That is just electrical architecture and how to build a vehicle. So that's outside of the autonomy domain. I don't know how much you cover that in a podcast about autonomy, but we do that.
Okay, so you open the rabbit hole. I'm going down the rabbit hole. So the EV architecture, today it's horrible. I own an EV. I've always threatened to blast the company I bought the EV from, but my wife says I'm not allowed to. So I'm going to be a good husband and listen to my wife and not blast the company, even though I've spoken to their C-suite privately about how bad it was. The EV architecture has to change. It has to improve. It has to get reliable, consistent, and it has to work. How are you working to solve that?
Yes. So everything that you just mentioned, these are exactly the problems that we are solving with our vehicle software platform. It is an entire rethinking of how the low voltage electronics on a vehicle are structured and how software is developed for the vehicle. You could even call this vehicle architecture 2.0. It's a complete rethinking of the electronics architecture and
2.0 is really in vogue for everything.
That's right. It's a completely different way of doing things. And then it really empowers the OEM to control much more of the experience. The problem with legacy traditional architectures, it's not that they're not working hard, right? It's like the OEMs are working very hard to make these systems good, but there's so many capabilities that are coming in this black box form that there are problems that the OEM actually can't fix because they don't actually have access to some of those things that are the root causes of those problems. And in our approach, we are really empowering OEMs to take control of those systems and then build a much better consumer experience.
Can you make the vehicle behave and not do silly things? Give an example. drove on a long road trip, and I used a fast charger on both ends of the trip because it was a long, about 11-hour drive. And I get in the car the following day. My car's about a 430-mile range on it, so people could figure that one out, what type of car it is. And then charge it up the next day, I only get 230 miles. Oh, I spit tax, start calling friends at this auto company. Next thing you know, magically my car's back to 430 miles on a full charge. Can your software fix that problem where it behaves and it's nice and it's not giving you false hopes and false negatives?
I don't know the details of that specific problem, but what I would say is one of the main problems of traditional architectures is they lack the ability to introspect and then send that information back to the engineering center where fixes can be made and software updates can be done. And so one of the core capabilities of our new vehicle software platform that we recently announced is incredibly powerful remote logging and diagnostic capabilities that really, again, enable and empower the OEM to understand what's happening in their fleets. And if there's a pattern, they can take corrective action and push new software to the vehicle that will fix that problem. That's sort of a roundabout way of saying, yes, I'm pretty confident that the improvements that we are enabling in our platform would be able to avoid or at least catch and fix that kind of problem.
And then can you help a traditional OEM, and I'm not going to name names, but they just take a traditional chassis, they put an electrical architecture in system and hope and pray it works to help them develop it from the ground up to actually be an electric vehicle, not a quote unquote modified electric vehicle?
You're asking, can that approach work?
No, can your software help enhance that so they're not taking this cumbersome software where it doesn't really come all together? Can your software enhance it?
Absolutely. I mean, it is a rethinking of how these systems are built and how software is made for vehicles. There will be this transitionary period over the next decade as architectures move from internal combustion to electric. And there, of course, is going to be parts that are reused during that transitionary period. But I think if you're looking at, let's say, 2024 versus 2034, the transition will be complete and everything will be entirely optimized by that time. But it's still possible to create really phenomenal vehicles by using existing components intermixed with an upgraded architecture.
Yeah, I don't think you have to be in a situation where the architecture, the subcomponents, the sensors, everything has to be new in order to have a compelling consumer experience. I don't think that's going to be the case. And I don't think consumers would wait for that. I don't think the OEMs would also, there's going to be this mixed, you say, architecture reality for a while.
You need software that works, and that's where Applied comes in. And then you get the really good updates. So you don't go 230 miles to 400 miles. So you could fix that with your remote logging, and the OEM can push an update. To me, that's a game changer because that's going to start to eliminate charging anxiety and range anxiety, which a lot of individuals have that buy these vehicles. Getting back to autonomy, I think a lot about licensing. Do we ever get to a point where Applied Tuition develops, you want to call a starter stack for autonomous driving, and then licenses out to your customers that can then start to build and enhance their own stack?
There's two parts of that. First is, that's what our tools currently do. They help folks really accelerate the work that they have. I mean, that's the mission of the company, is to accelerate the adoption of safe and intelligent machines. So I think that absolutely is the case. Maybe a little out of the purview of this audience is we also do a bunch of defense work. And without getting into too much in detail, there's a little bit of it online, but we obviously work for the US government and we work for some of the primes in accelerating autonomy in that universe, where we're playing more of a, let's say, a complete partner to them by helping them really figure out how should that stack operate and beyond just being a pure tools provider.
Peter, was the acquisition of Embark Trucks, was that allowed you to accelerate this development?
Yeah, I think we may have spoken about this even once in the past, but we, of course, have all of the Embark technology. One of the interesting things was Embark was also a customer of ours. And so they had also built quite a bit of tooling that complemented a number of our existing tools. And so we're able to integrate all of that effort back into our offerings for vehicle makers globally. So there's been a lot of small wins and some big wins in bringing that technology in-house.
Peter, how do you see the defense business complementing your traditional business?
I wouldn't use the term traditional in the sense of, I mean, the defense business, it's core to the business. I wouldn't separate like traditional versus defense. These are all really important things to the company. The go-to-market cycle is different, but the technology is much more similar than different. And our role, again, as it is with automakers, right? We are technology enablers, and we are trying to bring the best autonomy technology from Silicon Valley and make this available in the defense industry for the US government as well as the American.
I think if you put the problem that a passenger car maker has, the problem that a commercial truck maker has, problem that a defense prime has, and a problem that a construction manufacturer has, or a mining manufacturer of vehicles, or an agriculture vehicle manufacturer, there's a lot more overlap than you would think. It's not one-to-one for sure, but there's a lot of shared problems because they're all vehicles. They're all fairly large. Safety is a huge component. They're generally quite global. These companies don't tend to just build for an individual small local market. They build really internationally. And so when we help them, we're not helping a deployment in, let's say, in Germany. It has to actually work everywhere. And so we would play that role. But there's more similarity than you would think. Yeah, we've been in the defense business almost since the start of the company, and it's quite significant. So it's not a recent thing.
Wow. I was going to ask you, why defense? Why now? No kidding that you were in since the beginning.
It's a real part of the business. As Peter said, different go-to-market. It's obviously America-oriented, whereas automotive is more globally. We're going to have customers in lots of places around the globe.
And in fact, I mean, it's a different audience than I think the audience for this podcast, but we host every year a very popular conference in Washington, D.C., and it's called Nexus, and it's really about work that is really at the nexus of autonomy and national security.
I'll give you a shout out for Nexus. You booked some incredible speakers, and you have really good conversations and dialogue. And I thank you and to Qasar for not being afraid to work with the military, because those men and women need the technology and the tools. So I thank you and the whole team at Applied for rolling up your sleeves and doing that. What is the future of applied intuition? Qasar, we'll start with you, please.
Hopefully mine and Peter's views are not too varied. That would be cause for concern, cause for alarm. The future of the company, I think what we've done for the past 7 years, which is funny when you talk about why companies succeed, it's kind of like the analogy of if you talk about why a functioning family, it's always the same boring stuff. It's the mom and dad have a healthy relationship. They focus on the children. The dad washes the car on Saturday mornings, mows the lawn. It's so boring that it becomes almost cliche and people want something more exciting. Successful companies, I think, are actually also very similar. You have founders which are deeply, and leaders in the company are deeply passionate about a very specific technical domain. For us, it's AI and software broadly in a specific industry, automotive. And Peter is a third generation automotive engineer. I went to the General Motors Institute. We're not in any ways transplants. Like, this is what we've been thinking about and talking about since we were frankly preteens. As we grew into adults, this is an area that we know. So those are the reasons I think we've been successful. Plus our customer orientation. I think we've been prudent. We don't overpromise. We don't say that we're going to be able to do everything. And then all of those things kind of combined in some mixture of ingredients, I think created a stable business, which allows us to recruit great people and serve our customers effectively. I think we want to keep doing that. We just want to do it at larger and larger scales. The projects that we take on are more complex than ever. The customers have a bigger ambitions than ever. So I think we'll play that role. I think sometimes people have said, "Oh, do you guys want to be like a Bosch of software or an Aptiv of software or something like that?" I think there's some truth in that, but really the company we're becoming is not an X of a Y. We're just a different company, right? It's really hard to kind of use an analogy, because fundamentally, like, we're a tooling company, right? So are we more like an Ansys, or are we more like a MathWorks? But we also get very, very deep with our customers, where maybe those companies don't. So it's its own unique company. And I think the most maybe fundamental question is software and AI in the intersection of vehicles going to be an important dominion over the next 20 years? Absolutely. I don't think you have to be a General Motors Institute or Harvard Business School grad to I'm just giving shout outs to my alma maters at this point to conclude. Yeah, that sounds like it's going to be a pretty big market. I mean, very anecdotal. You can just look at Tesla. Look at the impact Tesla has made. And that's one company that is a couple of percentage points of market share. What happens when all the companies with near more like 100% of the global automotive market share, which is 3% of global's GDP, are these software AI enabled companies? We think there's a lot of room for Applied to play in that. Like what specific products and stuff like that? Partly it's we don't know, and partly is we don't want to tell you. So
just adding on to that, our mission as a company is to accelerate the adoption of safe and intelligent machines. And so
it's a great mission.
Here in 2024, we still have a lot of work to do, right? The autonomy is not broadly rolled out. I think we're barely at the tip of what's possible for software experiences in vehicles. And so there's just this enormous set of incredibly, I'd say, inspiring things ahead for us. And we're super excited to just have a big impact in vehicle technology.
Yeah, I think lost in all of this is just that safety conversation, and just fundamentally still how dangerous cars are, and how dangerous bulldozers are, and how dangerous excavators are, whatever large, heavy industrial machine you want to talk about. And so there's just a long path to actually make them much more safe and much more intelligent, and kind of truly unlock the almost like next generation of economic output for everyone involved.
It's going to unlock economic output. It's also going to have a positive economic from a cost savings perspective. It costs us U.S. taxpayers $70 billion a year for traffic crashes and pedestrian incidents on the roads. That's $70 billion a year in healthcare costs. It's unsustainable. Autonomy fixes that.
Yeah.
And what you're developing, the tools, you're giving your partners the tools to develop safe, autonomous vehicles that have a positive impact on society. Qasar, Peter, we always love having you on the road to autonomy. As we look to wrap up for today, what would you like our viewers and listeners to take away with them today?
We're hiring.
Yeah. We always say we like anytime you want, we're hiring in obviously Mountain View and Detroit, really all across our global offices. And if these topics interest you, if this mission inspires you, we're as good of any company to really exercise your skills to that end. But yeah, we're hiring. Applied.co/careers.
I'll summarize it this way: join Applied, build the future. The future is bright. The future is autonomous. The future is applied intuition. Qasar, Peter, thank you so much for coming on the road to autonomy today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.